Congratulations on this. It is fantastic.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
where does this idea come from?
Oh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times for me, how I know that a story is worth pursuing is if it comes from a place where I'm reflecting on people in my life or that I'm aware of, and you know, it reaches a point where it's almost making me a little bit uncomfortable. That's not to say that I know anybody in my life like any of these characters, thankfully, but I think they're all dealing with things, with feelings and with sort of repressed emotions that felt true to me to what I see in my own life, at least at the time that I was writing it, which was about 5 years ago in 2017. So that I think that was the origin. And more specifically, if you want to talk about the high concept or what you will, I was reading a lot about the idea of total control institutions being places where, if someone controls where you sleep, where you eat, what you do every day, be that, prison or a rehab or a boarding school or like any environment where you're in somebody's care 24 hours a day, they're going to start to be able to control what you think. Even if you consider yourself a sane and, you know, self-assured individual, they're going to have an effect. And so I think taking that concept, which obviously if you're watching something like Full Metal Jacket, you expect boot camp to have this transformative effect on someone. But it was like, what if we take away the uh, societal precedent,
Mhm.
that you expect in something like that, and we do it in a very unexpected setting, to make it feel sort of uncomfortably close to home. And so that was another way in for me with the story.
Yeah, this whole story is extremely psychological, and you're right. It makes you uncomfortable in certain parts, and I think that's what makes it work. Working the script, how did you have characters in mind, or actors in mind to play these characters, or how did that work? Because the cast does a lot to make sure that the audience gets into this film.
They do. I will say that I really love working with actors who are earlier in their careers, because, well, for two reasons. The first is that they're oftentimes a lot more willing to go with you places. We were doing a lot of exercises to build the relationships between the characters. I worked in theater for a while, writing and directing theater, and obviously there's a pretty long rehearsal process in theater because you need to be off book with the entire show before you start. And I wanted that same feeling of intimacy that you get from a long rehearsal process with this film. And so this is just to give an example. We were at my university. We were at Cal State Northridge, and we were in the basement doing these exercises. And I sort of sent the actors that play Robert and Emily, Charlie and Anna Claire, I sent them up to the library, and they had certain books that they were supposed to gather, and they were supposed to treat it almost like they were in school, and they were talking about these, almost, flirtatious, intimate memories from high school, and they spent a good 30-40 minutes doing that. And if you have somebody who is getting paid per second to be there, and you can barely get them to learn their lines sometimes just because their time is so precious. And so I didn't have specific actors in mind because I knew we'd have to find somebody, one who could fit with our budget. This is obviously a micro budget feature film. But two, people who could originate these roles in a really unique way. I think me and my casting director watched about 8,000 reels, um, for all the actors, it took many weeks, and then from that, I think we watched at least 500 or 600 self tapes, auditions, and we got those down very meticulously to, about 40 or 50 people for each role who we brought in and we read. And then the last step was a sort of callbacks with chemistry reads, where we took our top few for each role in different combinations. And the moment that we knew that these three were going to work was actually not even when they were doing the scene, but it was in between scenes as we were setting up. The three of them were sitting together and they were starting to talk and laugh. And I was watching the relationships between the three leads, and I said, this is going to work. This is going to work. Yeah.
Yeah, this is an indie film. You talk a little bit about budget being, a factor in that.
Yeah.
Were there any other obstacles that came with making a film like this?
Oh, definitely. A lot of the people who worked on this production were volunteers. I would say, calculating how much of a volunteer effort we got from the people, a lot of whom were like students, like myself, film students, or just trying to get their first credit. It easily would have doubled our budget to not have their support. So that was a big factor, because when people are volunteering, you have even more of a mandate to respect their time, and you can't force anybody into overtime. You can't treat them briskly. Of course, you shouldn't do those things on any production, but when they're volunteers, you have even more. It's almost like, you're serving them in a way, which I think is good, because as a producer director, it reminds you how much you owe to them, in creating an environment, things like that. So, obviously we have it structured in a way where, if there's a sale of the film, which is obviously what we're hoping for, there's provisions for all of those people to get recognized financially for their volunteer work before the film even starts to turn a profit. But that was something to consider. We also obviously shot in a neighborhood. This was in a house, and every single day I was terrified that someone was going to come and complain about parking, complain about noise, a nearby neighbor, because even if we had our permits, and all that stuff, they could still shut us down, if they got the cops to take their side, whatever. And we did not have a single day we could waste. We were budgeted day to day to day to day, wall to wall. So I every single day I was like, please, nobody call, please. We were trying to be so quiet. And obviously when you have a larger production, you can kind of throw money at people to make that not happen.
Definitely. And, it's always said that the story changes from writing to shooting to editing.
Yeah.
How have you seen that happen? I mean, you've been involved throughout the entire process. Are you happy with that final product?
I am very happy with the final product, which is a gift, because I know a lot of times as an artist, you look at your finished work and all you think is like what it could be, and I'm happy to not be in that situation with Screwdriver. And it absolutely entirely transformed, I would say at least twice, going into production, then going into editing. Going into production, a film that I use as a point of reference is Dogtooth, which is also a single location for the most part. And I know Yorgos Lanthimos likes to use these very wide, 22 millimeter, almost fisheye lenses. And he also made this very strong effort to make sure that he had this very, very large house with high ceilings. They looked for kind of the biggest house they could find, since they knew it would need to support 2 hours of film. Obviously, there was a part of us that wanted to do that too. However, there's only so much you're going to be able to do, especially in Los Angeles, where one, it's expensive, and two, people are very hesitant to let film crews into their beautiful mid-century homes, for good reason, for the most part. But the location that we settled on was much more vertical and much less wide, uh, than I expected, which gave us this completely different blocking as far as like creeping up and down the stairs, the different sort of levels. It was very cool in a way, and it adds a lot that wasn't there when we were imagining this as a one-story house. And as far as editing, I would say I tried to edit the film myself. I spent about 4 or 5 months fully intending on being the editor for the film, which is funny because I generally say that I find films edited by the director to be a little overwrought. So I don't know why I thought that I could be, an exception, but sure enough, at a certain point I was like, I can't do this. I'm too close to the material. I will say I am glad that I took all that time because I basically filled the assistant editor's role. I watched every single take from start to bottom. I marked my favorites. I tagged them. I made my selects. And so I could sort of pass that perspective on performance along to the editor. But when we found our editor, Wei Yang Lee, we had our finalists for editing submit samples of like the first couple minutes of the movie, which we paid them for, but we wanted to see their approach to this film before we committed to someone, and everything that we got was good. Every single person did a good job, but Wei Yang sent me his edit, and it was like completely out of order. I was watching it and I was getting really angry. I was like, how dare this guy? Who does he think he is to move all these scenes around? And the more I watched it, the more I was like, okay, he gets the tone, he gets the timing, he gets the comedy. And I can work with him if we need to like fix this order, because some of what he's doing is actually working. And I said, okay, this is someone who's not just going to do like what the script says. He's actually going to like find new moments to improve it. So we've got this intercut in the first sequence. That's all him, and I honestly think I'm going to try and work with him for the rest of my life, if I can.
That's awesome. And Screwdriver is it's on the closing night of Dances with Films. It's their 25th anniversary at a Chinese theater. What does all this mean to you as a filmmaker?
I mean, I'm very pleased. I think I tried not to have too many expectations about what our festival premiere would look like, our world premiere, because it could have been anywhere in the world. It could have been in any circumstances, big, small, Europe, Asia, US. But there's a part of me that's very happy to be getting to do it in my hometown. One, because it's kind of the home of show business. My managers can attend, people that I know in the film business here can attend, and two, because family and friends that I've grown up with for the most part can come out, and also because the people that I meet, if they're local filmmakers, are people that I can then maintain relationships with and maybe work with without having to fly across the world. So in that way, it's very wonderful for it to be in LA. Dances with Films obviously really stick to their guns when it comes to promoting new voices, which oftentimes is hard for a film festival as you get bigger, because as you gain legitimacy, there are always going to be studios and mid-sized production companies that want to use your festival as just an exhibition venue. You see that with a lot of the larger festivals, that it's not so much a selection by judges at the top level as it is these sort of studio deals, which is not bad. It keeps the festival circuit alive and it pushes money into the festival circuit. But the fact that Dances with Films has been around 25 years and they're still so excited to premiere a film like ours, with no curb appeal as far as the names to the average viewer, it means a lot, and it feels good to be there.
Definitely. Congratulations on this. It's a fantastic film, and I'm so looking forward to talking to the actors later on.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing what they have to say. I had a question because
Go
I
ahead.
think one of them wanted to know, is the actual video from the interview going to be shared, or is it going to
Yeah,
be a text write-up?
it's gonna be shared.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad I got out of my bathrobe then.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Excellent film, excellent writing, timing is perfect. It's just a fabulous film all around.
Well, you've made my morning. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. And thank you for taking the time to chat.